So, which ones in particular? You talked about this guy up here?
The behind the TV, yeah,
So
and the
that
one to
is
the left of
Skyrim,
the TV.
and that
Oh, Skyrim.
is San Andreas from GTA 5.
Massive fail. Massive fail. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Los Santos, right? Not San Andreas.
Well, San Andreas is the state. Los Santos is the
Oh.
city. Blaine County is the county to the north. You can find Sandy Shores, small town in the desert, Paleto Bay, Northern Shore. Anyway.
All right, guys, have a good one.
You
All
nerd.
After the Grand Theft Auto History Podcast.
We are officially recording. Welcome to the technically second episode of the Simply Sassy podcast. Of course, the first one had some technical issues. Maybe we'll put it out eventually, but for now, this will be our actual first one, hopefully. And I'm making the executive decision. We're now calling this the Sass Cast.
Yes!
I'm
Big
down.
wins.
All right.
Very
wins.
nice.
First ever episode of the Sass Cast. Thank you for joining me today, guys. All right, so I'm Gage. Over here to my right, we've got Largent. Down below, we've got Kumail. Down there, we've got Phil. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Yeah, good. Good.
I'm good. Mm-hmm.
All right, so The Last of Us Part 2 spoilers. I'm kidding, we're not doing that today. Screw that.
Oh
So-
my god, I've just finished and I just need it to settle. Need it to settle.
Yeah, Kumail got a knife to the brain today. He needs to pull it out
Multiple
before he
knives to
finally-
the brain. Absolutely.
All right, so we actually have a couple topics we could discuss today. I know Largent has a couple things he has ready for, what was it, your like top 100 games, and then your games you've never finished or don't like, which kind of coincides with my idea, which was going to be the taking a franchise, which franchises do you like the underdog games compared to everyone else? Like Mass Effect. Everyone praises Mass Effect 2 as like the best Mass Effect game. They love it. Personally, I think the first one's the best. It's just the best culmination of the RPG elements and the shooter mechanics, and the rest of the series becomes a total shooter and it gets rid of half the RPG stuff. But those would be our two options for today. Any of you guys have a preference?
So this podcast is just going to be like an airing of grievances for Gage. So
Now let me tell you why I hate... No, I'm kidding.
Hence, Sass Cast.
I was really exactly. I was really interested in speaking about sort of like games of the generation, but is that going to be a separate episode?
I mean...
Because I don't mind making that a separate episode because that's a really good
Yeah.
topic for everyone to get involved in.
We could absolutely do that too. For that, it's kind of a tough one because those are all three pretty good topics. But honestly, I think we should probably just start with... let's go through Largent's topic because he's actually got lists ready. So he can actually take us through the list and we can kind of discuss those games.
I've got a jingle for Largent's topic.
Yeah? Yeah.
He's talking about the big topics. It's Largent. There you go.
Wow.
Big topic.
Sass Cast
Man.
is Andy right there.
Yeah, big topics with Largent. I like that. All right. So,
So yeah, if
for
we're
it.
talking about Kumail, what he brought up, I actually have a list for that as well. So if you guys want to go through like games of the generation or this generation specifically, I have that. I also have them broken up by year and by I think by like subject. So a narrative-based action adventure game or a turn-based RPG or whatever else. So I have them all split
He
up.
did the maths.
nice.
I feel like we have to wait until at least Ghost of Tsushima comes out before we can start talking about games of generation.
That's
Well,
fair. That's
and
good.
Cyberpunk as well.
We do have many generations in the past that we can talk about, though.
True. We
Yeah.
could do pretty much everything, PS3 generation prior.
We can go the kind of funny route and just put so far at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's like best who won E3 so far. It just doesn't make any sense.
Games
Just so you
of
can
the
circle
generation.
back around a couple times.
Right. What's up,
So
Phil?
far. I would just say games of the generation.
Oh, right.
So far.
So far.
Good.
Yeah, let's go through like best games of every generation, not counting the current one. Starting with like, I guess, I don't know. Should we start all the way back at like Atari 2600 or?
Great. I'm just gonna put myself on mute for a little while.
Okay, let's start off from like NES. NES and that era. Let's move up. So, I don't know.
Philip, I think you're the most qualified here, aren't you?
Youch.
Jeez.
Ah, that hurts.
Looks
Throw
like-
up the old chat.
For those who don't know, that's an age thing because as far as everyone here is concerned, I'm basically the Nick of this group. Like
Yeah.
these are all young children, and I'm old.
You ever play Old
I mean,
Guy
if-
64? It's a great game.
Olden guy.
If we're talking about generations, my first generation was PlayStation 1. I think I had I can't remember the console name. I had one of the older consoles, but I don't have any memories playing it. So yeah, PlayStation 1 is the one I can consciously remember.
Well, that'd be a fun thing. Gage and Phil, what were you guys' first consoles?
Mine was the Atari 2600 with
Nice.
Joust.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, mine was the PS1, and then eventually the Super Nintendo was introduced. But yeah, PS1 was the OG console for me.
Nice. Mine was a little weird. So right before we got our 64, we actually had a Panasonic 3DO, and
Right.
it was something special in not a good way. So
You had like a Panasonic like VHS player or something, and your parents were like, "Hey, I like Panasonic."
I have no idea how and when or why we got it, but it was definitely right before we got the 64, and the 64 blew it out of the water once we got it.
Of course.
So,
Yeah. Panasonic wasn't in the game business very long, obviously. So yeah, I guess we should probably start with, since most of us kind of started in the 90s, let's start with like the PS1, Nintendo 64 generation. So I guess Largent, since you're the one who kind of came most prepared for this, let's just do one. What is your game of the generation for the PlayStation, Nintendo 64 era?
Well, to give you some backstory, before I played the
I said
PlayStation
just
1,
answer the damn question.
before I even played a PlayStation 1, I already had my PlayStation 2. So it's mostly going to be on the Nintendo side for me, which
That's
I'm
fair.
totally fine with.
That's
But
fair.
by far and away, it's GoldenEye. Not Olden Guy, but GoldenEye for the 64. That was probably the game I spent the most time playing on the 64, and most of my friends and people in my family playing it as well. So I think that kind of defined that generation for me. And there was a ton of other good games, but compared to GoldenEye, I think that kind of like that was the pinnacle game for me. And then playing Halo and in the future, like I feel like it stemmed from GoldenEye. So I feel like these huge pinnacle games in the next generations came from GoldenEye.
Yeah, we played GoldenEye for years. I still remember two last times we played. The actual last time we played that game was 3 or 4 years ago. We played a bunch of 64 games and realized how awful they all are.
Yep.
But before that, it was like 2006 or 2005. I remember you were at my house. We were, 15, 16?
2006?
We would have been...
Oh, we were like
11 or 12, actually.
Yeah, we were
at
like
that time.
young. Yeah.
Remember, we went over to my grandparents' house because there was like a family get-together, whatever. And since you were over, we brought your Nintendo 64 and played GoldenEye. And I just remember sitting in the living room, families all in there, doing family stuff. We're over in the living room just playing GoldenEye. That game was so good back then, but wow, it does not hold up at all.
No, it being a single stick shooter, I think it aged very, very poorly.
Yeah.
We've been playing twin stick shooters since the PS1 era, and that was it's been a long time, and they've evolved a lot. But yes, a single stick shooter is something of the past for sure.
Yeah, thank God. Phil, what is your game of the generation for the PlayStation, Nintendo 64 era?
that's a really hard question.
Of course.
I mean, I think if you had to level it, I gotta say Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
I mean, I love Metal Gear Solid, like Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil 1, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night were probably my most played games. in that era. Um, but I think Symphony of the Night's the one that I've come back to throughout the years and kind of continuously played. I mean, it's a little hard because Metal Gear Solid isn't really available um,
Right. Right.
to play unless you have, access to Twin Snakes on the GameCube or the, copy of the PlayStation 1 version.
Yeah.
Same thing kind of goes for the original Silent Hill. But Castlevania has kind of been readily available. It's been there on PlayStation, PSP, uh, phones now.
Yeah, and they even released the remaster with that and Rondo of Blood on PS4
Right on.
last
Yep.
year or whatever.
Yeah, so that's probably the game that I've gone back to the most, just playing it. It's such an easy game to pick up, play, and have fun with, no matter how long you've kind of been away from it.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a really, really good option. Kumail, how about you? What is your game
I get to be the basic guy. Basic guy. Crash Bandicoot, obviously, and I think particularly 3, but I think all the games, Crash Bandicoot games on PlayStation 1, even spin-off games.
There's nothing wrong with Naughty
many,
Dog.
so many great memories. Presented by Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were just fun games. I look at them fondly, but there were so many good games for the PlayStation 1.
Oh, absolutely.
And being someone who had one of those dodgy PlayStation 1s, I got to play a lot of games on it, so, know. Yeah.
One of those little gray boxes on the back of your console?
Couldn't comment, Phil. But no, yeah, Crash Bandicoot for sure. And, having Crash 4 coming out at some point this year is really exciting for me to get a proper sequel. But yeah, no, Crash Bandicoot for sure.
That is really, really, really good. I like that. I like that choice a lot.
Can I be a cheater and just give a shout out as well to like Tekken, the Tekken franchise, like Tekken 2, Tekken 3 on the PlayStation, and like going around to your friend's house and just playing a hell of a lot of Tekken?
I don't see why not. I mean, I did only say game of the generation, but now you're spitting out more, so. No, that's
I might get kicked off the podcast next week.
Yep. That's kind of a difficult one because I'm looking at all the games I have, and it's like, yeah, there's Final Fantasy, there's Metal Gear, there's all these great games, and then it just clicked. I think my game of the generation for that era has to be Toy Story 2. Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue, whatever the hell it's called. That game, not only did it succeed, I think the only game that has ever, in my opinion, been a proper Toy Story game, which is my favorite Pixar series, it actually managed to be a solid platformer. Being able to explore Andy's house or the backyard or Al's Toy Barn and have it be big open levels with some pretty cool Metroidvania aspects to it, kind of what you would see in like Medieval, where as the game progresses, you start unlocking new abilities that allow you to go back to previous levels and unlock new areas and stuff like that. I think that game, I don't want to say it's underrated because I know a lot of people do like it, but that one's probably my choice for game of the generation as far as like overall fun factor goes. But
do you know that robot? Do you remember that robot in like I think it was the basement or something like that? Yeah, you had to beat the tin robot in some sort of fight.
Yeah, that one was in the attic of Andy's house. Yeah, and you had to.
Dude, that terrified me, man.
I know.
Terrified me.
I still remember you climb up the rope into the attic, and then there's like this little arena where you can fight that boss, or there's like the rafters and the beams and stuff up in the ceiling. You can actually jump and kind of tightrope across to get collectibles and stuff. That game is.
It was a really fun game,
fun.
I remember it being huge as well as a kid. So like.
Even now, even going back and playing it now, the levels are massive and very detailed. It's a really well made game. I do like that one a lot.
I don't know if it's exactly the same as it was on the 64, but that's the version I played. Yeah. I know there's some differences between some 64 and PS1 games, even though they're the same title.
Those ones were the same.
Like that weird.
I also played it on PC before, so that game is the same on everything.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, that's good. That means I have the same experience because that game was so big, and it just felt massive. I mean, obviously you're a tiny little toy inside this normal sized world, so everything felt massive. But I felt like that game went on and on and on and on, and I feel like it's exactly like you're talking about. Like we grew up in the era where Toy Story was like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Pixar movies at the time, and it just kind of defined our childhood. So getting to be in that world as Buzz was just one of the coolest experiences.
Yeah, it's always
and in the 90s when Disney was making those action games like Tarzan and this one, there's so many good games, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and this was probably one of the best. So I think it's a really cool pick.
Definitely. And I do like how you brought up that some games can be different. I know me and Largent have played them. Kumail and Phil, have either of you guys ever played 007, The World Is Not Enough, on either PlayStation or Nintendo 64?
I probably did, but just can't remember it.
So that game in particular it came out, I think, within a couple months of each other, but that game, it's based off the same movie, but it's actually two completely different games made by different developers. The Nintendo 64 one, you're put into these big, massive set pieces from the game where you can, I think it's a bank or something in the first level. You actually can go up different floors in the bank and do all these cool things, and the game is just huge. The PS1 game is super small and linear, but it looks better. Everything's more detailed, but you're like funneled down hallways. It's a very interesting kind of contrast to see that it's supposed to be the same game, but it's made by different studios, and they did totally different things with it. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah, so it looks like the 64 version was developed by Eurocom, and I'm looking up the PS1 version now.
Man, Eurocom, yeah, they're still around.
Let's see.
So yeah, filling in the air. Where are you going to go next? PS2 or just we do move on?
I think now we should, while Largent's looking that up, yeah, we'll do PS2, and this one is definitely going to get a bit more interesting because we're introducing Xbox. We've got PS2, we've got GameCube, we've got the Xbox. Now this is going to get a little bit dicey later on because Nintendo's release cycle is so bizarre that once we get to the PlayStation 3 360 generation, we're just going to focus on the Wii. Okay, the Wii U does not exist. Just putting that out there.
Yep,
not that anybody would define a game of the generation on that console anyway, but still.
Especially now that literally every single exclusive title for that console has come out onto the Switch.
Yeah.
You know, there's not hardly any point in including it at all.
With an ultimate version or whatever, that little extra tag they put on there.
Yeah.
So it looks like it was
Yoshi's Woolly World, boy.
Studio called Black Ops Entertainment.
Black Ops Entertainment, that's right, man.
And they're made
killing it these days.
Maybe 15 games, and the last one was one Street Ball in 2006, so they're dead.
Damn.
F in the chat, please.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chalk outlines in the
Chalk
chat.
outlines in the chat. So, PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation. Now, this one's going to be a bit more interesting because there are a lot of games. Yeah, there's so many games from each of those that could easily be the defining game. So, I guess I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Let's start with Kumail this time. What is your defining game from that generation?
Someone's going to hate me here, but this is the easiest answer I can give, and it's San Andreas. Just simply thinking about how much of an impact it had.
Dude.
Like, we can all speak about it. I mean, feel free to join in, but like, how much of an impact? When I think about PlayStation 2 games, a lot of them are personal to me, but one game that penetrated like the general consciousness and like the conversations you would have at school, definitely it was like San Andreas, where everyone was just talking about it, everyone was playing it. That's probably the game of the generation.
Even to this day, I think San Andreas is the height of Grand Theft Auto. I mean, sure, 4 and 5 kind of progressed as far as, you know, visual fidelity, gameplay, storytelling, stuff like that. But, well, storytelling as far as maybe the quality of writing or whatever. But I think San Andreas is, for me anyway, the top dog in that franchise, because not only do you have a very well-made story, like that game goes on a journey with that story. It takes you from, you know, just getting back to San Andreas or to Los Santos, and then kind of, you know, trying to get the gang back together, and then all this other stuff happens, and in the end it turns out you were betrayed by one of your best friends the whole time. Like, so many cool things like that. The fact that the game had RPG elements that were taken out for 4 and then added back in for 5. The fact that it has one of the biggest game worlds I've ever seen aside from like maybe rare exceptions like Daggerfall or something like that, where the game is unrealistically huge and nobody should ever make a game that big ever again. But it did so many things on such a limited hardware back then that it's disappointing to play it nowadays and then see the current generation of games and go, why is Grand Theft Auto 5 only a city and 2 towns when San Andreas had 3 massive cities and a bunch of towns scattered around this big map? It was such a kind of revolutionary title for the generation that even today is unmatched in many ways. So that's a really good pick, Kumail. I like that one.
Also, spray paint and jetpacks. Like, let's go, boys.
Oh my god, all the tagging and everything.
Jetpack in particular, yeah.
So good.
I did like the whole kind of rep system as well, where you can gain rep and then get people to join you in your car and stuff like that. And you can drive around. If you get into fights, you got people backing you up. But yeah, like you said, it's hard to go back and play that game just because, like, for me, the aiming is just so bad. It's just so bad.
The controls are not great. Basically, Saints Row 2, I think, is more of a spiritual successor to that game than any of the Grand Theft Auto games are, because it took a lot of the same elements that game had, including the respect, where you have to level up your respect to unlock missions and get new abilities and stuff like that. So Saints Row 2, check it out. It's a good game.
And can we talk about the low riding like missions and stuff like that? When you just
so good
in your car.
So good.
Oh, it was just such a fun game, and yeah, one that was so heavily discussed back in the day.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll never forget R1, R2, L1, X, left down, right up, left down, right up.
Yep.
That's my Contra code.
Right.
Yep.
All right, Phil, what is your defining game of that generation?
So first of all, I would like to say that growing up in the '90s, that game hit really hard. Talking about Menace to Society and Dead Presidents, Friday, all those movies that I grew up with. Seeing that emulated in San Andreas.
Definitely.
The coolest thing was like playing one of those movies. And then second, I just wanted to say that Daggerfall doesn't get enough love, so thank you for that shout out.
True, very true.
And third, the game that would define that generation for me, it's got to be between Devil May Cry 3 and Metal Gear Solid 3.
Wow, yes.
Those two games are the ones that I probably put the most time into. I think for visual presentation, they both are just through the roof. Like, Devil May Cry 3 doesn't quite look as good as something like Metal Gear Solid 3, but the overall just, hype presentation, the over-the-top action scenes, riding the rockets, stuff like that, really put that game on just this level of fun and action that the other two previous entries hadn't really hit. And then obviously Metal Gear Solid 3 was the epitome of all the systems that had come before it, plus the new camo system and eating system and stuff, which, to be fair, I'm kind of glad they ditched later on with how many more systems they ended up putting into those games. But I think I want to lean towards Metal Gear Solid 3, probably. Oh, what am I saying? It's Silent Hill 2. I'm gonna throw both those other games out the window, and I'm saying Silent Hill 2.
Sure thing.
That's the third game in that I put the most time into. I mean, I even got the UFO ending to that game. So yeah, never mind. Throwing everything else I just said out the window. I mean, obviously they're still great games, but no, it's Silent Hill 2. Absolutely.
That's a good choice. So I've never actually even played any of the Silent Hill games except for the first one, because I didn't have a PS2 or an Xbox growing up, and I was so excited when Konami announced they were doing the PS3 collection of them, and then I saw the reviews for that remaster.
Yeah, they did a horrible job.
I decided I'm never going to play those games ever unless I'm able to track down like PS2 copies, but even then my PS2 doesn't ever get turned on, so it would be a waste.
So I'll say this right now: if PlayStation 5 does have further backwards compatibility than PlayStation 4, I will literally mail you my copies
God, I would love
so
that.
that you can play them.
That would be
If you can't see
fantastic.
Gage, he's just there crossing his
Oh,
fingers and looking
I
to the
hope.
skies
I
as if
hope.
just saying, "Please, God, please."
I hope. So
I think we all are.
I've collected so many PlayStation 2 games over the past couple years. I finally went out and bought one because I never had one growing up. And then when I bought this TV, it only has HDMI inputs. So I bought a converter, but it's like I don't want to deal with plugging them into an HDMI converter and doing all that bull crap right now. But
Yeah, I can see the wires in the background. I can understand
I got
why.
a bunch of crap here. Like that blue cable down there is just an Ethernet cable that just lays there because whenever Largent comes over, that's how we connect both the Xboxes together for System Link. And so I don't even move it. I just leave it on the floor. But I do want to comment on something, Phil. You mentioned Metal Gear Solid 3. I am a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. I love those games to death. That is the only mainline entry I've never finished.
Oh,
wow.
I finished 1, 2, 4, 5, and I even finished Metal Gear Survive, which was painful. But I never finished 3 because it was just so... again, I didn't have a PS2 or Xbox growing up, so I played 2 and 3 and Peace Walker when they put out the collection for PS3 and Vita. So I played through 2. It took me a long time, but it felt like original Metal Gear, so it's like, cool, there's some nostalgia there. I tried playing 3, and I got maybe 4 or 5 hours in, but it's such a time-consuming and very obtuse game, intentionally so. Like, it's supposed to be obtuse. You don't have a great mini-map or all this direction and stuff, and you're in this jungle area, and it's all brown or green, so it's kind of hard to see where you have to go sometimes. Again, that's kind of the reason it was designed that way, is to make it a bit more realistic, but trying to play it in modern times, it got to the point where I was just getting so frustrated, I just took it out, I put it back on the shelf, and I haven't touched it since. I want to, but there's just so much to play now that it's kind of difficult to find time.
I would love to see, just thinking about the foliage in Last of Us 2 and the way that game looks, I would love to see Metal Gear Solid 3 remade with today's technology.
Well, Konami put that damn
remastered
Pachinko trailer out for the Pachinko machine a couple years ago. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. I hate Konami. Konami's trash. They have so many good franchises they just let die.
Yeah, if you go to a pachinko parlor, it's not as if you're actually going to get the most out of it anyway, because you can't hear a damn thing amongst everything else.
True.
It's just so goddamn loud there.
True. But Silent Hill 2 is a pretty good choice. Okay, Largent, what is your defining game from that generation?
So, according to my top 100 games list,
I love that. I just love it.
I have it pulled up. I only have 96 on it currently.
All right. Okay, fair enough.
And to give some context, it's very biased. My ratings go story, and I rate it 1 through 10, gameplay, and then 1 through 10, and then I do a total. So like a total of those two. So if it's a 9 and a 10 in those respective categories, it's a 9.5. So the highest rating in that range is Halo 2, which I personally love, but I think Halo 1 is more generation defining, which it's lower on my list just because I think Halo 2 kind of expanded on everything that was good about Halo 1 and obviously made it a lot better. But there's something a little bit higher. But I have it on PC, not Xbox or PlayStation 2. And that's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And I know PC is the best way to play that game, but oh my god, that game is so good. I don't care what you play it on. And I think that's got to be one of the best games I've ever played. And when you were talking about Mass Effect earlier, I'm pretty sure they thought it was one of the best games ever too, because the first Mass Effect is very akin to Knights of the Old Republic.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I didn't even think of that one when you were going there. I was like, what's he going to pick? And when he said Halo, I was like, aha, so Halo is mine. But when he went to Knights of the Republic, I started second-guessing myself, because that game is, to this day, I mean, there's some stuff that I think hasn't aged super well. I think the sound design is kind of cheesy.
Oh, the sound design is terrible.
But the overall experience itself, the ability to create your own character and be a good guy or a bad guy and travel to all these planets from the Star Wars universe, and the freaking story in that game. When you get to that ending and realize that you were Darth Revan, I don't think a game has hit me with a twist that hard since that game. And there've been a lot, like God of War was great, Last of Us Part 2 great, a lot of twists, but that one in particular is by far one of the best, I think, moments in gaming history. I love that game so much.
So not to derail, because I wanna hear you expound on what you're going to be talking about. But now that I'm thinking about this and all the different games, like, is the PS2 Xbox era, like, is that the best era in video games?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
It is, because we focus on those consoles, but at the time we had the Game Boy Color and we had the Game Boy Advance. We had all these other amazing consoles, and those consoles also had just a huge library of amazing games. So I think that era of gaming is the best era.
It's close.
For sure.
When we get to the next one, I might have some things I can pull out to counterpoint that, but it's definitely great. Well, we'll get there in a second. But again, that's hard to tell which one is the best, because I could also look at the PS1 era and go, oh, Nintendo 64, we got Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, we got Super Mario 64, we got GoldenEye, stuff like that.
The problem that I have, though, is, like, yeah, there are definitely games that you might say are better than the games of that generation overall, but at the same time, it just had so many bangers.
Yeah, I mean, the PS2 generation, it might be because we did have 3 Grand Theft Auto games. We got, we got 2 Gran Turismo games. We got 3 and 4 on PS2, right?
When you had great EA
3 and 4
games.
We did. Like, that was probably one of the
EA Sports games were good.
I did play, I think, 1 or 2 Madden games on PS3, but the PS2 Xbox generation was, like, the last time I actually played sports games. We had the first 3 Call of Duty games, like...
Was NBA Street that generation, too, as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also had...
was great.
So, my actual defining game is going to be Conflict Desert Storm. That is it. I'm kidding. It's not. But we did have that game on there, which was fantastic.
And then, of course, you have... all the JRPGs and just, I mean, there's so many games in that era that are all really good.
Like, aren't most of the SMT games on PlayStation 2?
Yeah. Yeah, literally.
I'm just going to say that because it just went right over my head. It also was the console that officially killed Twisted Metal, which was great.
Get over it.
I mean, to be fair, Twisted Metal Black was really good.
Dude, I love that game. They tried with the PS3 one. Personally, I think it's a pretty solid game, but it kind of bombed, which sucks. But anyway, speaking on that, I think Halo is probably mine, because Halo is... It's definitely not my favorite game of that generation. I could say San Andreas, or I could say, like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings 2 Towers, or anything like that, or Mercenaries. But
Elder Scrolls Morrowind. There's a huge list.
So good.
Yeah, Mercenaries and Morrowind. Oh my god.
Hell yeah.
I think
StarCraft is in that generation too. Throwing that out there.
It's true. I think Halo is probably my defining game just because of kind of just what it did to gaming in general. Like, I don't think... First of all, I love the Halo franchise. I've read a lot of the books, and I've played the games that mattered. So 1 through Reach, screw everything else. Look, I tried to play Halo 4. It sucks. I tried to play Halo 5. It sucks. But I love those games so much, and because of Halo 1, not only did we get Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Reach, but without Halo and then Halo 2 giving us the multiplayer that it did, I don't even think we would have the same magnitude of multiplayer we see today in, like, Call of Duty or Fortnite or Battlefield, because it was really Halo that kind of revolutionized console gaming as far as multiplayer goes. Before that, people would play, Quake or Unreal or something on PC, and that was about it. But Halo made it like, hey, Xbox Live, try this out. You can play Halo online with your friends, and it kind of took off from there, which is why I think Halo is probably my defining game of that generation.
And that's totally fair because we did have Call of Duty up to that point, and we did have Medal of Honor, but after Halo and Halo 2 and that multiplayer, what they built on the multiplayer and the Xbox Live, it just branched from there, and that's when Call of Duty started flourishing. And then we got a multitude of other first-person shooter games, and we still are. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Halo was a defining game for a lot of different reasons. I think the split screen co-op through the campaign was one of the best designed co-op scenarios, even today.
Second to only Medal of Honor Rising Sun.
That was a fantastic co-op.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And then the multiplayer. I mean, the multiplayer in and of itself filled so many dorm rooms, so many friends' houses. So many different people linking all their Xboxes and TVs together so they could get as many players as possible, and really redefined multiplayer shooters. I mean, before that you had Unreal Tournament. Before that you had Quake. But I think Halo is where it really hit its stride for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So we can all agree that Halo's the best, right? I'm kidding.
I
love it, but yeah.
I would also point out that that was during the time when I had just started working at GameStop, and I was there for the midnight release of Halo 2, and it's still, I think, that and World of Warcraft, which also could be considered at the end of the cusp of this generation.
Absolutely.
I
I didn't think of that.
games, it's a whole different beast, isn't it? Really, when you think about PC games, but
Yeah,
that's
true.
World of Warcraft was.
Yeah.
If we are including like PC games and stuff like that, World of Warcraft. It's just every MMO that has come since it has tried its best, but nothing I think is ever going to reach the peak of what World of Warcraft was, especially up to the Burning Crusade / Wrath of the Lich.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but those two releases were definitely the biggest. Yeah, Burning Crusade's midnight release was insane. But I mean, I still am not sure if it beats out Halo 2. Halo 2 just had one of the biggest showings I've ever seen, and I live in a small area, so to have like a building full of people waiting for Halo 2 is pretty insane,
Yeah.
and shows just how good Halo 1 was.
Absolutely.
To make a small aside from the best games, God, guys, that generation gave us so many good games. One of my favorite is Need for Speed Underground 2, and I want to play it so bad.
How did I forget? How did I forget?
It's so good.
Yeah, fair.
It's way too high up on my list. It's way too high.
No, I think it's there for good reason. And I think with the rumors of Criterion working on something that's akin to the Need for Speed Underground series, we can be excited, I guess. Or should we should be cautiously excited?
Mm-hmm.
Cautiously optimistic.
I hope so.
Yes.
If I can be cheeky and give a little shout out as well to a game.
Yeah. Of course.
The Dragon Ball Z Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi.
Okay, next topic. Okay,
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
No, that's it.
So saying one last thing on generations, I think for development accessibility, the current generation is definitely the best.
Oh, definitely.
Being able to have all these indie developers releasing video games and fantastic video games and having all these different platforms for them to release games is insane. But I still think it's going to be a hard battle between like this generation and the PS2 kind of 2001 to 2005 era.
Definitely. So, we do still have one generation we're going to go over. And as far as this generation, for the PS3, 360, Wii generation, pretty sure me and Largent have the same game as our defining game. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts first. So, Phil, let's start with you. What is your defining game for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Wii generation?
It's obviously Wii Sports Resort.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
No, it was a fun game. I did like that one, though.
No, yeah, absolutely. For as gimmicky as the Wii was, it had a lot of fun stuff on it.
Absolutely.
Like No More Heroes, Wii Sports, Wii Sports Resort, even Red Steel 2 kind of hit its stride a
I never
lot
played the
better than the
second one.
first one. Well, after the first one, I don't blame you.
I mean,
But
I liked it for what it was. It was cool when all I had was a Wii to play games on. So I'm like, oh, it's a first-person shooter. This game sucks, but I love it. So yeah.
um, I I think I have to go with Catherine for me.
Really? Wow.
I loved it's that or Street Fighter 4. Um, so Catherine, I purchased both Street Fighter 4 and Catherine. I purchased the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 collector's editions because I wanted the unique covers for each game and the unique statues for each game.
Ah.
Kumail, you've actually seen my Ryu Sea Viper little figures. That's actually what those came out of for the Street Fighter 4 releases. But I also picked up, Catherine Full Body recently when it was released. Um, but that game, for some reason, I'm a huge stan for Atlas and the Shin Megami Tensei series, so that's probably part of it. But another part of it was just the this idea of cheating on your spouse or your partner was such a unique concept for a video game medium and story, and then to have it wrapped up in this like supernatural dream like nightmare scape where you were doing these fun little like routing puzzles to try and get to the top and not die. Just that mixture of just supernatural and just questionable choices, like forcing you to make questionable decisions and choices had been something I'd never experienced in a video game before. So
Very cool.
Yeah, looking it up right now, it looks like a puzzle game slash softcore porn, and it looks very interesting.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it never quite goes like into like an ecchi realm. It's definitely a little bit more tasteful than
Well,
that.
then I'm not picking it up
But
then.
they it's no Senran Kagura. That's what I'm saying.
Hey,
Um,
when we're doing a Let's Play series of that, Phil.
um, but it's still provocative in a lot of ways with the character trying to tempt you with sending you lewd pictures on your cell phone and stuff. But yeah, it's just a very very different game from anything I'd ever played up to that point. And then of course Street Fighter 4 was like the resurgence of the fighting game genre, and I was a huge fighting game fan when I was a kid, so that was just kind of like my window back into that whole. I think for a lot of people it was their window back into the fighting genre. But I think in the end I have to give it to Catherine.
Wow, that's a not a choice I was expecting, but I do like that one. I've heard a lot of good things about that game. I just never had a chance to pick it up myself. Also,
Yeah, I'm still
It's
to play it as well, and I
it's
will
definitely
play it.
not for everyone, but it's the we wouldn't have Persona 5 with the game.
right. Also, shout out to that being the first game we've mentioned today that has Troy Baker in it. So
That has what?
Troy Baker in it.
Wait, Catherine? Is he the main character?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Nice.
Now that you say that, I totally recognize the voice, but like without thinking about it, he's in so much, dude. He's also Kanji from Persona 4.
Yep.
Mm.
Um, and we were
Catman!
we were
Yep.
That's
going
my Troy
over
Baker
like a bunch of
impression.
stuff.
He's also, I don't know if you know
Nailed it.
this, he's Joel in The Last of Us. I know. Wow.
Am I the only one that feels like he sounds more like Troy Baker, like himself in Last of Us 2? Like when I hear him, I kind of just hear Troy Baker.
Yes. I noticed that too. I feel like so I feel like when I play the first game, it's pretty distinguishable. Like, okay, this is Joel. He just happens to be voiced by Troy Baker. But in the second one, I did hear more of him than I did what I remember Joel sounding like.
And it could just be because we've been just onslaughted by his brilliance and his talent so
Absolutely.
much in recent years. Booker DeWitt and all those great games that he's been in.
not to,
Batman, Two
not to
Face,
discredit
Joker.
any other voice actor or actress, but I think that the passion he put into that specific role, and you can hear it in his voice when he talks about it on like Kind of Funny Spoiler Cast or whatnot, or just even when he talks about something super serious and that's really close to his heart. When he does that, it's Joel's voice. So I think the passion and the love he had for that world and his character and Ellie, I think it really comes through Troy. So I think Troy wasn't playing Joel. Joel is Troy. Like, so I think that's why it sounds like him, because that is him.
I mean, he is from Texas, so
Yeah,
that kind of makes sense.
That's a good point though, because he is a very passionate person, very kind person too. He's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a pretty good observation. Kumail, what is your favorite game of, I guess we can say, the previous generation?
So I'm gonna bottle it, and I can't say my favorite game of that generation. But
All right, well,
what I
have a
would
good rest of your
say
day
is,
then, Largent.
what I will say, Modern Warfare 2, for the PlayStation 3, Xbox, Wii generation. I think in terms of multiplayer, I think that was probably, in my mind, the peak of what multiplayer was / is, and how good it can get on a console. So definitely Modern Warfare 2 for me would have been that game.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, that is
Definitely
really
not
good.
wrong.
That's a really good poll for that. So before we get to mine and Largent's, because again, I'm pretty sure they're going to be the exact same one, I do want to give a shout out to, I guess there's a lot of games. I'm going to give a shout out to 4 games real quick. Fallout 3.
Okay.
Fallout 3 was incredible. If it weren't for that game, we would have never got Fallout New Vegas. We would have never got Fallout 4. We probably would have never seen the resurgence of that post-apocalyptic genre, so Rage and Mad Max and stuff like that, without what Fallout 3 did. Oblivion, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I think that's the peak of Western role-playing games, in my opinion. The balance between action combat, deep RPG mechanics, great storytelling, big open world. I love it. Mercenaries 2, because EA sucks and should have never shut down Pandemic, and Mercenaries 2 is a fantastic game. If you've never played
For
it,
more on that,
buy
listen
it.
to last week's episode.
It is still available on Origin, so you can still download it on PC and play it. It's a great game. Phenomenal. And then Metal Gear Solid 4. Last shout out I'll give is Metal Gear Solid 4. My favorite of the franchise. It is crazy. It is long. It is obscure and weird and so much fun to play, and even more fun because it's the only game I've ever been okay with sitting down to watch hour-long cutscenes. I love that game to death. But anyway, those are my...
I feel like...
Yeah, shout-outs.
I feel like it's the Death Stranding... it's the Death Stranding of Metal Gear title.
Absolutely. It is definitely kind of the most obscure, crazy shit Kojima did with that franchise. Largent, do you have any shout-outs before we get to the pinnacle of video games?
Yeah, mostly because I know what you're not going to mention, and that's Assassin's Creed games. I think the Assassin's Creed games of that generation were fantastic, and obviously Black Flag kind of bled over to the next generation as well. But the first 4 games, excluding Black Flag, which was 4, I think were all fantastic, and I think they continually got better. But other than that, go ahead and drop the bomb.
Rainbow Six Vegas 2, the defining game of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 generation. That game...
I thought that was a wind-up for a second.
That is the game. That game is somehow one of the buggiest, clunkiest, worst games I've ever played, while simultaneously being one of the best made cover shooters with deep character customization, and it has brought so many hours of enjoyment out of it to the point where it's one of the few games where I can say the bugs in that game make it better. I never thought I'd say this, but there's nothing funnier than running into a room and getting sniped in the face with a shotgun from 30 feet away when the guy was still aiming at the ground. It's so random and catches you off guard, but it's so much fun to just kind of keep playing through terrorist missions.
Is it one of those things where if you don't laugh, you're going to cry, so you just have to laugh at it?
To an extent, yeah. But it is actually a really fun shooter as well. Like, when it works, it's actually pretty well made. going back now, though, you can definitely tell, like, if you play Call of Duty 3 or Call of Duty 4 or Halo 2, you know, they're a little clunky, but you can still play them. This game feels like it came out, like, 10 years too late in 2007 or whenever it came out. Like, it already felt like it was dated. But it just works. Being able to fully customize your loadout, change the way your character looks, be able to play it in so many different ways, do story or do terrorist hunt or do multiplayer. It's just a fun game. Like, ultimately, it's just a fun game. And for me, that's why it's probably my defining game of that generation. It's just so good.
I put so many hours into Terrorist Hunt in that game.
Yes.
Dude, it's ridiculous how
It's
good it is.
it's one of those
Phil,
games
why
that,
were you
like,
looking at me when
almost,
you said that? I'm just joking.
It's almost like a joke because it's such a weird game and, like, it never got that much attention. But everything that Gage said is totally right on the head. Like, it's one of those games that when I go over there to hang out with them, we just pop it in just to play, you know, because it is just fun. And the terrorist hunt mode is fantastic. It can be really relaxing or it can be really hard depending on which difficulty you put it on. And it's one of those games it's so bad, but it's timeless at the same time. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was so devastated when the sequel got canceled.
Yeah, Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Sad day.
And a Rainbow Six game hasn't. None of them have scratched that itch for me.
Not
None of
even
them that
close.
have come out.
I mean,
and I gotta say, there's 2 games on my top 100 games list that are 10 out of 10s for the total points, and one of those is God of War 2018, and the other one is Rainbow Six Vegas 2.
Yep. It's just something about that game. The fact that it has one of the weirdest kind of level design, I guess, enemy placement. The enemy placement's so bad because it's not predetermined. You don't start a level and then it automatically places all the terrorists and you go. It's like procedural in how it places them. So when you first spawn in, it only spawns in like maybe 2 or 3 enemies, and then depending on what path you take, it will spawn enemies in different areas. So if I go like Villa, for instance, you start in this little garage. You can either go up through the house or you can go around the house. If you go around the house and you go wide, it's a straight shot to the stairs. But if you go close to the wall first and then peek around the corner, it'll spawn an enemy in the back. So it gives you a free kill, basically. But you have to go to the right spot or else it will not trigger that spawn. And that's kind of how it treats everything, which is bizarre when you clear the whole house and then all of a sudden enemies start coming up from behind because they weren't ever spawned until you got to a certain area. It's very weird, but once you get that down, it almost becomes like a science where pretty much almost any time Largent comes over now, that's what we do. We go to the hardest difficulty, we jump onto Villa, and we just... It's a procedure we follow. We go into the same door, into the same room, kill the same enemies, and we just do it until we finish it. And then, like, that's just how it kind of manifests, is like repetition, but there's still enough unpredictability there that it can sometimes change stuff up where you'll play it 7 times in a row and you're like, okay, this time we got it because I know that guy's gonna be there, that guy's gonna be there, that guy's gonna be there, we got this. And that'll be the one time that the game changes it, and now all of a sudden that guy isn't there and you're like, what the hell? And they spawn in a room behind you, come up and flank you. It's just random unpredictability that kind of changes it up after a while. It makes it so interesting to play even after all this time. I love that game so much. It's so good.
It's like comfort food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, it's not a great game, but it's comfort food. Speaking of not great games, now are we ready to talk about The Last of Us Part 2?
Are we not going to give a shout out to the Wii U generation? This is
Hell no, we're not talking about that generation.
Okay, can I talk about it at least, please?
When we all leave, you're free to talk about whatever you want, dude.
I'm taking on the podcast. Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild for Wii U generation.
What?
Okay.
Get out of here.
Okay.
No.
We already talked about all this stuff is on the Switch.
Clearly, the best
Yoshi-
Wii U
Yoshi-
game is Zombie U, okay?
Yoshi's Woolly World. Yoshi's Woolly
Killing it.
World. That's unironic as well. I mean that.
So, we've kind of discussed our defining games of generations. After discussing
about
all
Visa?
those... look, we all know the Vita is the best handheld. Okay, we don't have to talk about it. It's great.
We can move on to handhelds next time.
Yeah, we could
Okay,
actually. So now that we've discussed all of them, are you guys still kind of set on PS2 being like arguably the best of the best?
I think in terms of this library it had, I just think it has to be.
Like I said,
think
for me, the only thing that contends with it is the current generation because of the accessibility in releasing your games and having all these indie games, these great indie games.
Right.
So many that it's hard to even cover every single one or play every single one.
Mhm.
But as far as like, double A, triple A company made titles, I think absolutely.
Nostalgia definitely plays a factor into it as well for me, I guess.
Definitely.
Being those games are the games I've grown up with, so I tend to look at them more favorably than I probably should. So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I
No,
guess what proves that it is the best generation is because EA was making the best games at that point. Now they've fallen off a
That is
cliff.
that is pretty true, actually. Yeah.
I got off gaming for a while because I couldn't afford to buy consoles and stuff like that, and just naturally I wasn't listening to game news and stuff like that. So when I jumped back into gaming and heard that everybody hates EA, I was like really confused by it. I was like, wait, why does everybody hate EA? They made some great stuff. I'm like, oh,
PlayStation
kill
2
me
was
then.
the last era that you could mod reliably. That's why
Yeah.
people had to stop.
Well, you've clearly never heard of PC gaming. Yeah, I'd probably have to agree with it that era is probably the best. As much as I love a lot of the games that came out of the PS1 era or the PS3 era, just thinking about the library of that time, getting games like Morrowind, Rainbow Six 3, all three GTA games, Halo and Halo 2. Oh man,
Well, and that was one of the first
licensed
generations
games.
that started collections too, because you had like
Yeah,
the Namco collection, you had the Mega Man collections, you had the Street
absolutely.
Fighter collections. I mean, that era had a ton of good retro collections.
Yeah, it gave us Metal Gear 2, 3, and Twin Snakes, which was pretty cool. Never played
Mhm.
it. I finally got a Wii so I could buy a GameCube game and play it, but it's like $80, so screw
I
that
was gonna
game.
say, good luck. Yeah, good luck
Um,
getting that.
they
and for
had
how
one at,
small the GameCube like list of games is compared
yeah,
to the PS2 and Xbox, they have some very very good games, but not a lot of like people played them at the time because of
exactly.
how weird the GameCube was.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
also. Oh, go ahead, Phil.
I was just gonna say Resident Evil 4 was an exclusive, timed exclusive for the GameCube.
It's true. That was the first time I played it as well. Was on the GameCube. But I think that generation was also the last generation where we actually had quality licensed games. We saw some stuff like that later on in the PS3, Xbox 360 era, but
Yeah,
like,
everyone remembers Avatar, right?
okay, well,
Not quite as well as I remember the Lord of the Rings games from the
yeah, like
PS2,
that's
but
the biggest thing is thinking like the Lord of the Rings franchise and getting Two Towers and Return of the King, which are phenomenal games. Getting Star Wars Battlefront on PS2 and
Yeah,
Xbox was
Battlefront 2,
God
yeah,
absolutely.
so good.
fantastic
Like
games.
all the Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings stuff was so good on that generation, and then it just kind of
Yeah,
dropped
KOTOR
off.
1 and 2.
Yeah. Then we got the PS3, Xbox 360, and they're like, hey, we're not doing Battlefront anymore. We're giving you Lord of the Rings Conquest. And then that came out, and then EA's like, we're shutting down the studio, we're killing the online service, we're not going to patch it. Yeah, sad day.
Chronicles of Riddick Butcher Bay. That was an Xbox title.
Yeah, that was the first one. That was the good one. Yes,
Guys, I forgot to give a shout out to one game on PlayStation 3 that I really love.
go for it.
Fast and Furious Crossroads. Oh wait, that's a PlayStation 4 game. Sorry.
As
I
soon as you
got I
said it,
got
it
Fast
made
and
me
Furious
laugh.
Showdown.
Oh, I didn't know that existed.
Yep. Neither did I.
Uh,
It's not good because just like the new game, that feels like it's a PS2 game, and now
Is
the
it?
new
Has
one
it
feels
come
like a
out
PS3 game.
already?
No,
Oh,
I
it
don't.
hasn't.
I don't know when it's coming out. I thought it was supposed to be out already, but I think I got pushed.
It's
It looks so
it got
bad.
delayed until like August or something like that.
Oh damn.
why would they delay it? It's been done for 10 years.
Yeah. Do you guys have time for one more topic, or
I'm easy, man. I'm easy. Keep
Yeah.
chatting.
All right.
Yeah, I gotta make dinner soon, but yeah, I can one more.
All right.
Uno mas.
We can make it a quick one. My phone's at 10%.
Sure thing. You want to get on your list and go to the worst game or the games you've never finished or you don't want to finish, because I want to see if there's any that I'm like on the same level with you with, or if I can convince you.
God.
Probably not. This is where Phil and Kumail and probably you are going to stop being friends with me. I'm just gonna,
Too late for that.
Put it
dude.
out there.
Look,
All
if you're gonna say Persona, just kick me out the call.
That's my number
I've
3.
never played a Persona game.
Oh, all right. Goodbye.
I want to buy 4 for the Vita, but I have so many Vita games, and I never. I don't.
It's
play
on
my
PC
Vita.
now. Buy it on PC.
Okay, I built a custom PC, and half of that was to play games. I don't play games on it.
Yeah, I don't play games on my PC. Although
Just
I need to
TurboTax
fix
and
that with
Unreal
Halo
4,
and
huh?
go back
Pretty
to
much,
Final Fantasy
dude.
14.
I still see you on Roblox. What are you talking about, buddy?
Oh my god, that camera's hot.
One?
Fuck.
RuneScape? Wasn't that a thing? Was that a PC?
That was the thing. I never
I was
played
trying to think of
RuneScape.
nerdy games.
Oh my god, that camera's on fire.
RuneScape. Did you mention RuneScape? That's a game of Generation A. RuneScape.
Maybe.
Yeah, when did that come out? That's
99, I think.
It's an old
99.
game.
I feel like it was 99. Somewhere between 99 and 2001.
99. I was playing Tarzan. Man, that game
Oh,
was
that was a fun game.
All right, so let's hear
okay.
it. Give me
So
the
how do
number
you
one.
want my number 1
just
is
yeah.
Metal Gear.
Oh yeah. Have you ever played any of them?
Yeah, I played 3 of them. I played Metal Gear 2, and I probably put 50 plus hours into it. And granted, this was when I was, when did that game come out? Early 2000s, right?
We have to make one distinction here. You're talking about Metal Gear Solid.
Solid, yes. Sorry, Metal Gear Solid, yes.
Sorry.
Because technically Metal Gear 1 and 2 are different games.
That's correct. Let me add Metal Gear Solid.
Don't worry, Largent. It's a sort of shame for me as well. So.
Yeah, and at this point, I feel like there's so many games to catch up on, and then even trying to watch a video about like what happened, it's like 8 hours long, and I'm like, So
I owe it to Phil to go there at one point.
The plot of Metal Gear. So the first one, originally released on the MSX home computer in Japan, basically dude, I could go on for days about every Metal Gear game except for 3.
So yeah, I've tried.
Gear.
Is David Hayter here with us? What's going on?
No, so I tried 2, and I put about 50 hours into it, and then I picked up Jak and Daxter at the time, and I never looked back. And then I tried 3, and I just couldn't get into it, and then I played. Was Phantom Pains the one right before 5?
That
Ground
is 5.
Zero.
Or Ground Zero. Okay, so Ground Zero I played. I don't know if I beat it, but I wasn't in love with it, and I wasn't attached to the character. So that was one I really tried to get into.
You probably did. It was only like 30 minutes long, so.
Well, yeah. But it's just one of those that's like number 1 on my list because it's like everybody loves those games and holds them in such high regard. And like this is my number 1 shame right here is Metal Gear Solid.
Dude, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, not everyone is gonna fall in love with Kojima's fucking weird ass narratives and overly complex gameplay system.
Yeah, absolutely. I can nothing.
I literally watched someone.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I literally watched someone play Metal Gear Solid 5 for the first time last night on stream, and they got through I think the 3rd mission, and then we're like, I'm done. This is just too ridiculous and convoluted.
Yeah, and that was me with 2, and I was like, wow, this game is like really intense and it's cool, and I'm like, I'm running out of ammo, like this is tough. And then I just got to a point where like the story started, I'm like, I don't know what the hell is going on, I'm done.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 2 is probably the weirdest as far as, well, no, I would say Metal Gear Solid 2 is probably the weirdest as far as overall story goes. I mean, 4's got some weird parts, but yeah, 2 does a lot that kind of turns it on its head over and over and over again. So I don't blame you for falling off of that game. It took me forever to finish it.
Yeah, and being like preteen age, my mind was just not ready. It was just like, what the hell? I'm playing Jak and Daxter.
What else is new?
Tell me more about nanomachines.
So, the next one down is Final Fantasy.
Now
Kumail,
this
I'm
is the
sure,
one.
spoiling if he's
Sorry,
a Final
what?
Fantasy guy.
What do you say? Final what?
Huh?
Final
What?
No, seriously. No, you can't out for me.
Oh, I cut out.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy.
Oh, okay. No, same with me. To be honest with you, it's like
okay.
something I had missed, and I've only caught up. With some of the games, not all of them.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely. I was just going to make the point previously that it's just so funny, like having all these games for PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, especially having a modded PS2. It's just funny on how many games that people call classic I've missed out on, despite me playing like a bunch of B tier games and whatnot. So
that's
yeah.
That's kind of
There's just so many games in that generation that you're inevitably going to miss some, and if you're not clued into the industry at that point, you're not going to think to play, your Final Fantasies or your Metal Gears and stuff like that. So
I have to kind of agree with that one a little bit, so I do have a lot of shame when it comes to the Final Fantasy franchise. So I love Final Fantasy. I've played a little more than half of them. I've played 1, 2, 3. I think I've actually played 1 through 9, and then I played 14 a little bit, and then 15. 15 is the only one I've ever finished. I love Final Fantasy VII to death. I love that world. I have never myself finished that game. I got really far once, and my save data got corrupted, so I just looked it up online and watched videos of it. And I have not gone back to finish it yet.
What's really cool is that with the sort of port, not the remake, but the port that came to PlayStation 4, it makes it so much easier for you just to catch up to where you were.
Yep.
If you want to. So,
and I got really far in that, and then I stopped playing for a couple of weeks because of work, forgot where I was, tried to jump back in, and was like, there's no journal or anything, so I don't know where I'm at, and I gave up again.
And I hate when games do that. It's just like, if you put it down, there's no way to kind of read something to be like, okay, this is what you were doing, this is where you were, and stuff like that.
All JRPGs before now, without
pretty much.
System tracking.
What are you talking about? Even now.
They're definitely awesome.
True.
So I've been trying to play a bunch of older games, not older games, but games I've had for maybe a few months to a couple years I've never finished. And one of them is Pillars of Eternity, which is like it's Obsidian's original franchise. It's essentially like a Baldur's Gate spiritual successor. That game, I've put maybe 4 hours into it, and I still have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to do, because just like Baldur's Gate, the reason I've never finished any of those games, they're so damn obtuse. They don't expressly tell you what you're supposed to do unless you read through like 30 pages of dialogue, which is like, Morrowind did that back in the day, but the stuff you needed to know had hyperlinks, so you could just click on it and it would take you to the journal entry and tell you, oh, you get to this place by going here, here, and here. And it's like, cool. Playing Pillars of Eternity, and it's like, you have to go to this place and talk to somebody. And I'm like, you go to the world map, and nothing is shown on the world map until you start exploring that area. So I have no idea where to go. And the fact that games still do that is just frustrating. I hate that so much.
Have you played Divinity Original Sin 2?
Nope, I never even finished the first one because it's bugged for me. I can't unlock trophies for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why.
That's in my mind, that's like the epitome of that style of game.
I want to try the second one. I liked the first one, except it was just bugged, but it was cool.
So I wondered what thoughts might be on that, just because, that's like the epitome of that genre. But yeah, that's definitely, again, that goes back to my JRPG comments. Those games that are like Wasteland or Shadowrun, stuff like that, all kind of sort of fall into those old school RPG categories where they try and even the newer ones try and emulate the older ones. So
definitely.
With not incorporating the more modern mechanics.
Where are you at on battery life, Largent?
I think about 5%.
Okay, let's.
I'll make mine quick. Two games
that
I started and just haven't ever got back to, which I feel ashamed about. Shadows of Mordor and Dishonored, the original one. I started them on PC and never got too far into them, even though I loved them. So yeah,
I can understand those.
I have those two on my list as well.
Yeah, I've never played either of the Dishonored games. I haven't actually played any of the Arcane games except for Prey, which kind of goes on this because I've never finished Prey. I've played a lot of it, but I just never finished it. But
as a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day. Just a bad joke. Bad joke.
But I'm totally spacing it. What was the first one you said?
Dishonored, perhaps?
The other one.
Shadows
Oh,
of War.
Shadows of Mordor, yes.
Yeah.
So I did finish Shadow of Mordor because that came out when Destiny came out. I remember that. So Largent at the time, we were roommates, and he bought Destiny and he bought Shadow of Mordor. And so basically, he would play Destiny during the day, so I was stuck with Shadow of Mordor. I eventually...
Sorry.
I fell in love with it. I finished it. It was a great game. I played Destiny at night, and that game was trash for a long time. So,
It was bad, but it wasn't as bad as people make it out to be.
I hated that game at launch.
Once people
Taken
like you
King
then
came
in that
out.
case.
Once Taken King came out, I was like, this is one of the best games ever made. But
Yeah.
Activision, I'm so glad they are hands off on that game now. But
Yeah, fair. That's fair.
kind of goes into Shadow of War. I've been playing that game since launch, which was 2 years ago, and I just beat it last week.
Oh, nice.
It gets really good towards the end. It becomes a great game, but yeah, that's something that, God, if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings in review, I wouldn't have had any inclination to finish that game because it's long and it's repetitive. But I've been trying to trek through because I have so many games I haven't finished before. But
I think we're quite blessed that games are going up in price, so that we can actually go back to our backlogs and finish.
And I'm
those.
kind of forced to because we can't afford to buy
Yeah.
new games. We got to finish all the other ones, definitely.
Maybe we should talk about that next week because I've got some thoughts on that. Basically,
Yeah,
I know there's
absolutely.
been big uproar, but when you look at the balance of things,
To an
not
extent,
that
depending on the
surprising.
game and developer. Ever
Yeah.
since Witcher 3
Yeah.
came out, I've been okay. Like, if CD Projekt Red was like, hey, the standard edition of Cyberpunk is $100, I'd be like, okay. Okay.
they've proven it.
Like,
Yeah.
The Witcher 3, I spent $60 on that, and then when the DLC came out, they were allowing pre-orders at a discount, but I waited until they launched at full price to buy them because I felt like they needed more of my money because of how big that game was.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's things like, Battlefield 5, where it's like, this game shouldn't have been $60 at launch. It should have been maybe 40. So it for me, it kind of goes based on what they're actually offering as far as the game goes. But yeah,
I'll pay any amount of money for Bethesda to give me a new Elder Scrolls game. Doesn't matter.
They did. It's called Elder
Elder
Scrolls
Scrolls
Blades.
Mobile.
Well, and that was free.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty good.
It's a good game.
Anyway, that is the first ever episode of the Simply Sassy Sass Cast.
You're gonna act like my 1 hour and a half didn't matter last week. I'm done.
I didn't even get to say my guilty game.
Oh shit, you didn't, Phil. Take it away. Go for it, man.
No, and before you go, Phil, I think this would be kind of a fun running mini topic at the end of the shows or whatever to say.
I was thinking the
similar
same thing.
guilty.
Yeah, I like this.
I was absolutely thinking the same thing. Mine is Persona 5.
Yep.
Being a huge JRPG fan, being a huge Shin Megami Tensei fan.
Being
The fact that
Persona 4 fan.
being a huge Persona 3 and 4 fan, and playing the entire Persona series on the PSP, it just pains me to think that I not only have feelings of regret not beating it, I also have feelings of not even wanting to go back to it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Phil, you've done the right thing. Royal is out now.
Persona 5 Royale. All the characters fight to the
just
death.
go back,
With
go fresh
cheese.
again, and oh man, I'm telling you, it's gonna be worth it. I promise you. Just as much as you're struggling, just get through it. I know the reasons why you don't want to play that game, but
I know,
Phil.
we've talked about it in depth.
please, please.
From the outside looking in on that series, it just seems like such a time sink.
Yeah.
Oh, it
That
is.
is the thing, though.
Absolutely.
I feel like how it's paced, though, especially with the story, it doesn't feel as long as it is. You know, some games feel longer to me that are shorter. For example, maybe that's another topic for another day. But like,
Yeah.
To be
Persona
fair,
for me is one of those games. Sorry.
I put 324 hours into Monster Hunter, so time
There you
sink
go.
isn't necessarily
I
a
have,
problem.
about between the two Destinies, a little over 1,600 hours. So
Yeah.
I feel that.
I'm very much looking forward to getting to Destiny with you, Largent, and certainly Gage once
Absolutely.
PlayStation 5 comes
Would
out.
love to have you in there. Love to have you on a fire team. Okay, everybody say their piece. We good?
Yeah, that was it.
We
That was
good?
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for the first ever episode of the Simply Sassy Sass Cast. The actual first episode ever
got that,
we've ever
dude.
recorded. Ever. Episode 1 right here. All right, we will see you next
What
time.
was I was like the beta then?
Yeah, you just bait.